On a quiet street in Rosario, Argentina, a 13-year-old boy said goodbye to everything he had ever known. Not only to his home and his school, not only to his friends, he also said goodbye to his brothers and sister. The world knows exactly who he became, but almost no one knows what he had to leave behind to become that person. This video is the drama behind the greatest star in football history. This is the true life drama of Lionel Messi. This is not the story of goals or trophies. It is the story of 4 siblings, an impossible decision, and a bond that not even an entire continent could break. This is the story of Lionel Messi. Before the world learned his name, Lionel Messi was simply the third of 4 siblings. That was all. He was born in a modest 2-story house on Calle La Valleja, a quiet street near the Paraná River. His 2 older brothers, Rodrigo and Matías, were his first teammates, his first rivals, and his first protectors. Every afternoon, the street in front of their house turned into a football pitch. Every evening, the same 3 boys came home covered in dust, arguing about who had scored the most goals. To the neighbors, they were simply a group of ordinary siblings chasing a football. No one could have imagined that one of those boys would one day be remembered as the greatest footballer of all time. But before the stadiums, before the trophies, before the world started watching him, there were only 4 siblings, and one street that belonged only to them. Then that day finally came. The offer from Barcelona would change the family's life forever. But that offer was not made to just one child. It was made to an entire family. Are you ready to leave everything behind and move to an unfamiliar country? For his father Jorge and his mother Celia, this decision was far more complicated than anyone could imagine. Because it wasn't only Lionel's future that was at stake. The lives of Rodrigo, Matías, and their younger sister Maria Sol would also be changed by that decision. At first, the family decided to go together. Mother, father, and all 4 children packed up their lives in Rosario and moved to Spain. But no one knew at the time that this togetherness would not last very long. Years later, Lionel still remembered the day they left Rosario with remarkable clarity. In one interview he said, "When we left our neighborhood, all of our neighbors and friends came to say goodbye. The whole street was there. The street that had once belonged only to the 3 brothers was now filled with people watching them, waving goodbye and shedding tears. Rodrigo and Matías and their younger sister followed Messi toward a life they knew nothing about. None of them realized that those would be among the last days they would spend together. The first months in Barcelona were far more difficult than the family had imagined. A new language, a new city, and not a single familiar face. Rodrigo and Matías had left behind their friends, their schools, and everything they had ever known in Rosario. While their younger brother was beginning to shine at a football academy, they were trying to rebuild their own lives. But it was anything but easy. As the months passed, the truth slowly became impossible to ignore. This new life was simply not sustainable for the entire family. Their mother, Celia, realized that her children needed their education, their friendships, and the chance to have a normal childhood back in Argentina. Eventually, the family was forced to make a decision that none of them wanted to make. Celia, Rodrigo, Matías, and Maria Sol would return to Argentina. Their father, Jorge, would remain in Spain with his son. This was not just a physical separation. It marked the end of a life that the siblings had shared every single day. Lionel would no longer wake up every morning and see his older brothers. They would no longer run through the streets together, chasing a football. For a 13-year-old boy, this was the price of the biggest dream of his life. His family could no longer stay together. At the time, no one knew how long this separation would last. No one knew that it would become the silent sacrifice that would one day shape the greatest footballer the world had ever seen. But distance could not break the bond between these siblings. Every week, the telephone lines between Rosario and Barcelona became a bridge. Rodrigo and Matías followed their younger brothers' progress at the academy from afar. Every goal, every milestone, every piece of good news became a source of pride from thousands of miles away. And every summer, every Christmas, the family tried to reunite again, even if it was only for a few short days. Returning to that old street in Rosario became a sacred tradition for all of them. Years later, Lionel would say, "I love football and I live for it." But family comes before everything. Those words were more than just a sentence. They carried the weight of years spent apart, missed birthdays, and countless moments they could never get back. While Rodrigo and Matías built their own lives in Argentina, they watched from a distance as their younger brother became one of the most famous footballers in the world. On some nights, they saw him on television wearing his jersey while entire stadiums chanted his name. But to them, he was still just Leo, the little brother they had played football with in the streets and walked home with, covered in dust. Fame never changed the bond between them. It simply gave that bond a different form. Because true brotherhood is not measured by living under the same roof. It is measured by always being there for one another. Time passed. The little brother was no longer just a football player. He had become a legend. His name hung on posters in children's bedrooms all over the world. Millions of people wore his jersey with pride. Yet strangely, the people closest to him never changed. They were still Rodrigo, still Matías, still Marisol. Only their roles had changed. The two older brothers who had once run beside him in the streets had become the invisible hands behind his extraordinary career. Rodrigo began working alongside their father, Jorge. Through the organization known as Leo Messi Management, he took charge of his brother's commercial deals, media schedule, and public relations. Every contract, every advertising campaign, every interview request first landed on Rodrigo's desk. He became the shield protecting his younger brother's time, energy, and reputation. Every day brought dozens of offers, hundreds of requests, and thousands of expectations. And among all of them, perhaps the only person who truly understood what his brother actually needed was someone who had known him since childhood. This was never just a business relationship. It was childhood trust, transformed into professional responsibility. After all, who could know a person better than Rodrigo? Who else could tell when he was exhausted? When he needed to step back, which opportunity truly mattered, and which one was nothing more than empty publicity? Matías chose a different path. He became involved in running the Leo Messi Foundation, the family's charitable organization. The foundation that carries his brother's name has helped thousands of children through education, healthcare, and opportunities for a better future. Perhaps this was one of life's greatest ironies. Years earlier, when their little brother was still a child, his football career had nearly come to an end because he could not afford an expensive medical treatment. Now, another member of the same family was leading a foundation that helped children facing similar challenges. It was as though yesterday's pain had become tomorrow's gift. But what truly made Matías stand out was not only that responsibility. Those who knew him also knew another side of him, a brother who never hesitated to defend his younger sibling whenever he believed he had been treated unfairly. During major tournaments, whenever his brother was criticized, attacked on social media, or targeted by unfair comments after a match, Matías refused to remain silent. He spoke openly, directly, sometimes with anger, but always out of love. Sometimes in the comments, sometimes in interviews, and sometimes through messages he shared on social media. Because for him, it was never simply about defending the world's greatest footballer. It was about defending the little brother he had grown up with, the one he had played football with in the streets, walked home with covered in dust and shared a room with. To the rest of the world, he was a superstar. To Matías, he was still just Leo. And their younger sister, Marisol, found her own place as well. She first worked as a brand manager for Messi's clothing brand, and later joined her brother's production company, 525 Rosario, where she focused on brand strategy and creative direction. Like her older brothers, she chose to become part of the vast world built around her brother's name. But she never disappeared into his shadow. She built her own path through her own talent and identity. The four siblings may now live in different cities, carry different responsibilities, and lead different lives. But each of them remains part of the same story. Perhaps that is the most beautiful part of this story. Fame often tears families apart. Money often drives siblings away from one another. Success often turns even the closest relationships into jealousy, rivalry, and distance. All around the world, there are countless stories of siblings who were forgotten, left behind, or forced to live in the shadow of someone famous. But in the Messi family, the opposite happened. To this day, they still return to Rosario whenever they can. Every Christmas, every birthday, every special occasion, they try to go back to that old street, that modest two-story house on Calle La Valleja, because they know that not even the greatest trophies won in the world's biggest stadiums can replace the childhood memories they shared on that street, winning a FIFA World Cup, lifting the Ballon d'Or, writing your name into history. These are extraordinary achievements, but none of them can replace a family laughing together around the dinner table or celebrating a birthday side by side. Perhaps this is what true wealth really means. No matter how far you go, no matter how successful you become, no matter how famous the world makes you, there are still people who see you as their little brother, who still want to sit at the same table with you, and who will always raise their voice to defend you. Lionel Messi's feet wrote history on the greatest football pitches in the world. Millions of people chanted his name, wore his jersey, and watched every match he played. But perhaps what truly made him the person he is today was something the cameras never captured. The quiet story of 3 brothers, 1 sister, and a family who said goodbye on a street when he was 13, yet were never truly separated. Sometimes the greatest victories are not won on the field. Sometimes the greatest victory is allowing your family to see you as the same person, even after the world has tried to change you. And perhaps future generations will remember Messi not only as a footballer, but also as a man whose family remained united despite distance, fame, and time. This story is also an invitation to remember something in your own life. No matter how far you travel, your greatest treasures will always be your family and your true friends. This channel was created to share the stories beyond the pitch, the real side of football, and the human moments behind the biggest names in the game. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.